pressing the big red button and we'll start. Great stuff, thank you. Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to this meeting of the Council of Governors of Lincolnshire Partnership NHS Foundation Trust. I'm Kevin Lockyer, I'm the Trust Chair. Let's go straight into the agenda and deal with the routine stuff at the beginning of every agenda. Apologies for absence will be noted in the minutes. If anyone has any declarations of interest which are different or additional to those that are already registered, please can you indicate so now. If there are none, I can't see any. Can we please move on to item 1.3? And before we do, I'll just remind people, if you don't mind switching your cameras off, please, unless you're about to speak. And then when I bring you into the meeting, if you could turn your camera on then, that would be great. Thank you very much. We'll move on to item 1.3 then, which is the minutes of the meeting in the Council of Governors held on the 25th of January 2024. So first of all, can I ask if anybody has any points that they want to raise on those minutes, either points of accuracy or any matters they wish to draw to the Council's attention? Carol.
Carol Hagan, Governor for North Cassim. Yes, I did send a correction to Karen that on page 2, I think it is, it should be life on years and years on life. There's just 2 words missing. Just wanted to clarify that.
Okay, thanks, Carol.
Yeah,
pick that up and have that corrected accordingly. Thank you. Yeah, thanks, Karen. If there are no other comments on the minutes, are colleagues happy for me, please, to sign them as an accurate record of the meeting? If you are content for me to do so, if you'd indicate in chat, that would be really helpful. That's great, thank you very much. We will move. Oh, we should have said, and forgive me, at the beginning of the meeting, I'm just catching up with myself a little bit. I might need to be slightly creative with the order of the agenda. We'll almost certainly need to take the draft quality report out of turn at about 4:30, so that Sharon Harvey can talk to that for us. So that in that case might be taken slightly out of order. I've got a comment. Bex.
Yes, thank you, Kevin. I'm Bex Metso, Deputy Lead Governor. I just wanted to, I'm sure with your comments just now, welcome the governors that are new to their roles, that are meeting with us for the first time this evening, and hope they enjoy the meeting.
Thanks, Bex. That's helpful. That saved me doing that under the chair's comments. So thank you for that. And I'll join Bex in welcoming new governors to the meeting. And if anything that we do this afternoon appears arcane or mysterious, please don't feel bashful about asking questions as we go. We'll move on then to item 1.5, which is the schedule of actions. That is hopefully speaks for itself. There are 4 actions there, all of which have been completed or closed. If colleagues have got any questions or comments about any of those actions, please can you let me know? I don't see any. Thank you very much. then we'll move on to the minutes of the Board of Directors meetings held on the 29th of February and the 4th of April. And Carol, you've been kind enough to let us know in advance. Let's have in advance some questions about those minutes. I see you've also indicated that you've got some questions in chat. Are these additional questions, or were they questions on an earlier point? Sorry.
The same questions.
Excellent. Good. So you've let us know in advance what those questions are. Karen, I'm not sure who's going to respond to them.
Kevin, would it be helpful? I mean, Carol, obviously you're more than welcome to make your comment and ask your question personally, or I can read them out for you. But I think Sarah, our Chief Executive, is prepared to respond to both.
Good. That was my understanding too.
I'll certainly read them out. So Cara Hagan, Public Governor for North Kesteven. Yes, I find it curious that the CQC visit to Ash Villa was unannounced. My daughter lives in a residential care home with 5 others. They can be challenging, and when there is a CQC visit, the home is always given advance warning. And that's because strangers are going to be entering the building. I would have thought that patients at Ash Villa, thinking about the nature of Ash Villa and the nature of the patients, you know, could be upset too, maybe by strangers being present and asking questions. So as I say, I'm curious about that and why the difference.
Yeah. Thanks, Carol, and thank you for reading your questions out. As Karen said, she would have been quite happy to do that for you to save you doing it, but that's really great. Thank you. Sarah.
Yeah, thank you for the question, Carol. So if I first pick up the point about the process, I suppose, because it has changed slightly with the latest sort of update of the CQC framework, and then I'll talk a little bit about sort of the context of the visit. So CQC inspectors are able to sort of cross the threshold of any CQC registered building, of which Ash Villa is one, at any time if they have concerns and they carry a warrant to do so. But you're right, it's classed as unannounced. Those CQC inspectors will have had training and experience of working in mental health environments and would not speak to any of those patients if they felt that it would cause unnecessary distress. And they aren't actually on the ward for the whole assessment, so they will do some interviews and some observations. And on this occasion, the inspectors did sort of sit in a room upstairs for periods of time during that assessment, because they don't want to be disrupting and upsetting the ward environment. As part of their new way of working, we were sent a poster which was emailed to Ash Villa to staff to place on the wall on the day, explaining to patients who the CQC are and that they would be present on the ward for one day, and what the nature of that visit was, to try and alleviate any concerns. So that's the process. In terms of the actual sort of concerns that were raised, I thought it'd just be useful for context that the 2 concerns that were raised were around medication, and medications being subscribed but not actually being there present on the ward, which is actually in line with our policy, because the nature of those medications is you wouldn't have them in stock. They would be made available at the point that they are prescribed to a named individual. But you know, we always welcome independent assessments of our units. We haven't actually received the report yet, and we're continuing to request this because we're interested to know, you know, what the outcome of that assessment was. But it was very positive on the day, and the assessors were very complimentary about the ward and the compassionate care that they saw. So watch this space in terms of the feedback that comes, but there will continue to be unannounced and announced visits. Mental Health Act inspections, for example, they're always unannounced as well. So, you know, the first we know is literally when they turn up at the door. Is that helpful? Does that answer your question, Carol?
Yes, Yes, it is. I mean, I presume that the inspectors, as you say, that they're highly trained, would respond appropriately if they arrived and there was an ongoing incident or some emergency. You know, it's
Yeah.
they're not. Yeah, I just had, you know, it just surprised me. So my second question, this is following on from the minutes of that board meeting. How is it that the lack of PICU care, have I said that rightly, the psychiatric intensive care unit care for adult females, has come about? Is that cultural, that females were thought not to have the need?
Yeah, so I'll pick that one up, Kevin, if that's okay as well. So
Yeah, please do. Thank you.
So again, just for context, there has always been male and female PICU activity. Pre-2017, both males and females received that activity out of county, but the numbers for male patients has always exceeded those of females. So it's not a proportionate split based on population. So, you know, we were kind of averaging of about 8 male patients and about 2 female patients. But the male activity lended itself to a business case in terms of actually, you know, we couldn't open a ward for 2 patients, but we could open a ward for 8. So we did some modelling on that basis and put a business case forward to our CCG colleagues at the time. We had a business case that included some capital works as well. So we were able to open a unit, a male psychiatric intensive care unit, with females continuing to receive their care out of area. We've tracked very closely the female activity, knowing that that is a health inequality, because we've got an in-county for males and an out-of-county provision for females. As we've been tracking it, the activity for females has been increasing and sort of stabilising around sort of 5, 6, 7, back down to 5 again. That's why we're saying actually is now the time right for us to assess whether we could make a female ward viable. Hence why we're doing that little bit of exploratory work now. Thank you.
Thanks, Sarah.
Again, I hope that answers the question, Carol.
Well, that's interesting, and maybe this shows my ignorance, but having just been talking about Ash Villa, would it be possible, feasible, a concept that Ash Villa might have an emergency bed for somebody who needed that level of support?
It's a different sort of
therapy.
Yeah, so I think the site would be an option to consider in terms of you know, the capital provision, but the nature of the service would be would need a separate unit as such. So but you know, we're trying to be as creative and resourceful as we can be while we're struggling with our capital resource that we have available to us, as well as, you know, ongoing issues around making sure we've got sufficient skilled workforce as well.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you, Carol. Thanks, Sarah. We'll move on then, if we may, to item 1.7, which are comments from the chair. You'll be relieved to know I don't have any over and above the issues that we will discuss on the rest of the agenda, and I certainly don't want to steal any of the Chief Executive's thunder when she comes to speak to her report. So I will skip lightly over comments from the chair and move on to item 2.1, which is the highlight and exceptions report from the Representation Committee on the 8th of April. Debbie.
Thank you. Sorry for the delay. The report is in front of you, been previously circulated. Hopefully people have had a chance to have a look at it. Happy to take any questions on it.
Thanks, Debbie. I don't see any questions or comments, Debbie, so okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And then, so we'll move on then to item 2.2, which is the Governor's Activity Report. Samantha.
Thanks, Chair. Hello, everybody. I'm the Governor Membership Officer, Sam Swindell. This is your Governor's Activity Report. So it's reporting on everything from the last quarter in terms of what you've carried out, other than main formal meetings. The Governors are asked to receive this for information and discussion as necessary with any of the activities. So I'm happy to take any questions.
Thanks, Samantha. Any questions or comments? I don't see any. So do you want to move on to the iLog?
Okay, thank you. So the next paper in front of you is our iLog record from the last quarter also, which is our issues, ideas and innovations that have come in from our constituent members through to the Council of Governors. It's a very comprehensive list of iLogs and what we've done with them to process. So unless anybody's got any questions, this one's just to receive for information.
I'll give people a moment if they need to bash away at their keyboard. No, I don't see any. Thanks very much, Sam.
Thank you.
We'll move on then to item 3.1, which is the Chief Executive's report. Sarah, back to you.
Oh, thank you. Sorry, I should have introduced myself earlier. I'm Sarah Connery, Chief Executive here at the Trust, and would also like to offer my warm welcome to our new governors joining us here today. So I complete this report along the lines of our sort of strategic platforms around a healthy population, quality people and best use of resources. But hopefully it's understandable, but always welcome feedback from people if you need any additional clarification or you feel that there's something missing that should be in the report. But hopefully the report gives you a flavour of everything that's been going on in the Trust and in the system, the health and care system, as well as regionally and nationally as well. Just to draw your attention to some additional services that we've brought online, links into one of the iLog issues raised that Sam talked about in her report around autism weights. Just for clarity, LPFT provide adult diagnostic services for autism, whereas ULHT provide children and young people's autism diagnosis. But the Virtual Autism Hub, which is now live, so we've been very excited about this, to offer support to people of all ages and their families, whether they've had a diagnosis or not, in terms of getting support through education or health. So I'm really excited about that. I've also included in the report around NHS 111, and this is something that we talked about at the Governor Development Day. So this is part of an additional offer through urgent and emergency care for people needing urgent support. So this is a national directive to have an NHS 111. People may know we've had a 24/7 mental health matters helpline in for a number of years now, but this is where people will call the 111 number, which is obviously well known to people, and sort of press a button 2 if people are in a mental health crisis. So we've been working really closely with our system colleagues on this in terms of the pathway, but there's going to be no what we call a hard launch, where this is really extensively publicised in the media. NHS England have said that will come in the autumn of this year. Just something I wanted to point out as well, and again I mentioned this at the Governor Development Day, NHS England have published an agreed definition around parity of esteem, and it's something that we've been talking about in the Trust for a long time in terms of we all want parity of esteem for mental health services as well as physical health services, but we've never really had anything solid to sort of bolt that against. So I'm quite pleased that we've now got this in terms of a real pragmatic approach to defining, well, if we had parity of esteem for mental health services, what would it look like? And I won't go into too much detail, but that's there explained on page 3. Operational planning guidance. We're in the middle still of a very tricky planning round. Finances are extremely stretched, well, in all public services, and the NHS is also under extreme financial pressure. So unfortunately, we haven't been able to engage our governors in the process as early as we would like to, because the guidance was only released a few days before the start of the financial year. So we are actually going through that process now. I also just wanted to point out some work that we've been doing with local university and colleges as well. As you know, we have struggled with recruitment and retention, not just at LPFT, but across the NHS, and particularly felt in Lincolnshire as well. As a rural county, we do sometimes struggle to recruit people post their qualifications, but we're doing some work with the colleges and the universities around building that really strong pipeline in the county to make Lincolnshire a great place to study, to live, to work and to thrive. So we'll keep you updated on that work as it progresses going forward. I also want to just point out a really positive staff carer conference that we had at the end of March. 1 in 3 members of NHS staff identify themselves as a carer. So we're trying to work really closely as a system to make sure that we're offering the support as much as we can for people who identify as a carer. And just to point out some celebrating success stories there, which, you know, we have some fantastic staff. So please do have a read of that as well. I'll stop there, Kevin, at the risk of droning on. So I'm happy to take any comments or questions or feedback from our governors. Thank you.
Thank you, Sarah. I'd never accuse you of droning on. Thank you very much. I mean, it's a characteristically comprehensive and detailed report for which I'm sure colleagues are grateful. Questions and comments. So I've got Bex first.
Thank you. I'm Bex Metz, so Deputy Lead Governor and constituency of service users. I think that's a really positive, the 111 service, by being able to dial 2 on the recording and going through to a mental health professional is going to be so positive for so many people's lives. And I just wanted to put that on record.
Thanks, Bex. Completely agree. Daniel.
Thank you, Chair. Good afternoon, everybody. Dan Fleshbourne, Adult Community Governor. So I just wanted to firstly commend the Trust for the Staff Carer Conference. It was an amazing day. I was given the opportunity to speak on the day and share my own lived experience, but also hearing the stories and the passion in the room was absolutely amazing. So I just wondered if Sarah could briefly talk about the System Carers Toolkit and how the Trust is going to integrate that for our own managers to understand more about our staff carers.
Yeah, great question, Dan, and not one I can answer in any great detail. So I was wondering if I could take that outside as an action and bring it back to either through the action plan or a separate paper to the governors.
Yep, we can do that, and we can make sure we pick it up at the next meeting of the council if that's acceptable, Dan.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you, Dan.
Great stuff, thank you. Carol.
Yes, just wanted to quickly mention I had noticed a BBC article on their app about children and young people's mental health, and Karen has told me, and governors might like to know, that apparently there's going to be a report presented to governors on the work of the children and young people's mental health transformation, because there's been an increase in referrals.
Yeah. Shall I come in, Kevin? If that's okay.
Yeah, please do.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So you know, children, young people services, sort of post COVID, well, through COVID and then post COVID, has been one of those areas that has seen significant increase. So LPFT and Lincolnshire County Council have been doing a transformation programme. So this year has been phase 1, where we've been doing a bit of a diagnostic and speaking to lots of children and young people and their families and schools and head teachers, and just sort of getting a understanding of where we are as a baseline, what are the gaps and what needs to change going forward. So as you said, we've got that planned in for a future session, I think possibly July, where you can hear all about that great work that's going on.
Okay, lovely, thank you.
Thank you, Carol. I don't see any other questions or comments, Sarah, so thank you very much.
Thank you, colleagues.
We'll move on then. We'll take the staff survey results next. Amy.
Thank you, Chair. So, hello, I'm Amy Beaton, Director of People. I'll take the paper as read, and if I just pull out to really highlight in this National Staff Survey for 2023, our results were really positive. When you compare to our previous year's results of 2022, but also when you consider our benchmarking against all 212 NHS provider trusts, and also then when you compare us with the 52 mental health and learning disabilities and autism trusts. So those that are new or not familiar with the National Staff Survey, there's around 100 questions, and then they're grouped into 9 domains, and that's what you can see in Appendix 2 of the paper. So 7 of those domains are aligned to the people promise. So those that would relate to the rainbow, it's got those 7 headings, and then the additional areas of staff engagement and morale have also been added to that. And when you look at how we perform in those 9 areas, that is extremely positive when we compare ourselves nationally. So as the paper states, we were the top trust nationally against those 212 providers for We Are a Team, and we are recognised and rewarded. And then when you looked at us against our mental health, learning disability and autism providers, we were then top again in areas we are compassionate and inclusive, and joint second for we work flexibly and staff engagement. So some real positive results for us this year. The areas for improvement, so we were aware, I think the bit that we did take was we understood the areas that would come through for improvement. They weren't a surprise to us, and actually the provider of the survey that runs the national survey, they say that what's statistically significant is anything above 3%, and as the paper shows, actually in our areas of improvement, it was between 1% and 3% a change for us, where our positive areas were between 7 and 12% shift. And I think the most notable one that we saw at that big 12% was staff feeling that there is enough staff for them to do their job properly. That had seen an increase in 12%. Still work to do, but had really shifted over the last year. Just also, as the paper shows, we have got plans in place. So you'll see, obviously, alongside our new trust strategy, we have strategic delivery plans now, and they really focus in on what we're doing in this outstanding people pillar to really continue to shift the results in that positive direction, but also that our directorates and divisions are really looking at also their results and what's just specific for them in divisions to work on, as well as the organisational level plans. And just to finally say, this is an annual survey. We know that. We've got the quarterly pulse survey in between that, but we know how our staff feel doesn't remain static, and we continually do engage around these results and triangulate them with other data sources, so which are listed on page 4 there in the paper, so that we continually understand how our staff feel about working for LPFT. Thank you, Kevin.
Thank you, Amy. Thank you for a really informative report and for adding some detail to that. It's fair to say, isn't it? It's however you put it, it's an extraordinarily good set of results, and as you say, not something to become complacent about. But absolutely, I'm sure colleagues will want to join me in offering some positive thoughts about just how well the trust has done. But I see some colleagues with questions and comments. So Bex, you first.
Yeah, it was just a term that I didn't recognise in your report, and that was PICA average. Could you explain that for me, please?
Yes, I can. Sorry, Bex. Yes, so PICA is the provider of the survey. So they deliver the survey nationally. There's 2 providers, Quality Health and PICA, and we chose PICA to run our survey for us. And therefore all of those providers that choose PICA, they then do an average. Basically, they'll say everyone that's chosen us to run our survey, so X number of those provider trusts, this is how you benchmark against all of them, which is why it's important for us to also wait and look at the national one, where it compares us against all across the 212. But we get the PICA average data first, and then we get the national later.
Thank you for that explanation. Perhaps it might be an explanation that comes as part of the paper for newer governors, because next time the report comes out, it will need some explanation again, and it will save time within the meeting, perhaps.
That's a good suggestion, Bex, and I think for any papers that involve kind of technical information, a little glossary is often helpful. So thanks, good suggestion, Bex. Thank you. Anna.
Hi, I'm Anna. I'm Specialist Staff Governor for Specialist Services. I had the first comment to say that it's really good we show improvement in those areas as well, and that's really good to see. But what I wanted to ask about was the areas of concern. So I know that not the biggest amount of staff complete the survey. However, I thought it was quite worrying to see that there were so many staff that reported bullying and harassment, so many that which is 63%, so many that were reporting physical violence as well, which is 93%. I found that quite a staggering number there. And I think just the ones experiencing discrimination as well from both managers and colleagues being a 6%, and experiencing discrimination from patients being a 7% as well. And of course, the appraisal as well is also on there. But I thought, what are we doing as a trust about that, and about staff feeling that way, and the physical violence staff are experiencing, especially perhaps on the wards or other environments? And just what are we doing with those areas of concern moving forward was my question.
Thanks, Anna. Good questions. Amy.
Yeah, thanks, Anna. And I think sometimes the way it's worded isn't particularly helpful. So just to assure and I suppose explain. So 94% of our staff have not experienced discrimination, rather than have, just to clarify that, and 93. So it's a drop of 1% since last year. But just so that you're assured, that's not. I know you said you're really stark in that, but yes, so it's just to clarify that. Anna, this was known to us, and it's really saddening, I know, but it was known to us, and we have got a whole programme of what we call belonging. It's very high up on our board agenda. We talk about it in board development sessions and in the board arena. and we have what we've termed challenge, educate and support work streams aligned to our belonging work in order to really support to move these results into a better position, and for our staff to be free from any kind of discrimination, bullying and harassment. And some of the work going on in that space, some of what our staff are saying to us is some of that is violence and aggression from patients, and you know, what are we doing to support them in that space? We've got our clinical advisory group working with us in terms of how we identify capacity of a patient and what we do if there is capacity and they've harmed our staff. So we're going through a process of that. We're putting through and working with our staff around the robust support packages they want to see in place. Often they're saying it's not the harm itself, it's what happens after. And so we're really working around that. And in terms of the education space as well, sometimes staff saying that there's not the intent that they mean to come across in a discriminatory nature, but that's how it's received. So we're educating our staff around cultural awareness and doing things in that space. So there is a whole programme going on, and I'm happy to come back and share the progress in that space if Council of Governors want to see that at a future meeting.
I would be more than happy to see that. That sounds very positive. Thank you for that.
Thanks, Anna. Thanks, Amy. Just to clarify a couple of things for me, Amy, if you don't mind. So I absolutely get what you said, that the measures on discrimination are the percentage that have not experienced it. Can you explain a little bit more the figure for last experience of harassment, bullying, abuse reported? I don't quite know what that's measuring. What does that mean? 63% of people are doing what?
Yeah, 63% of people are reporting when they experience harassment and bullying, so 37 are not.
Yeah, so it's not 63% of people have experienced it, it's that they've reported it when they have. So it's not a measure of how many people have experienced harassment or bullying, it's a measure of how many people have reported it. Just wanted to be clear about that, because I'm not sure that's quite how Anna had read it, and I just wanted to be clear that we're not saying that 63% of those surveyed have experienced those things.
No, absolutely. 63%
have reported
right.
it. Yes.
Yeah.
But we don't know 63% of, you know, kind of how many incidents, but that's fine. It is the statistic is what it is. Debbie.
Hello, yes, thank you. Just if I could clarify, would I be right in that there is a process of assurance that the board will follow through on the staff survey? Is it through the people committee? I'm not quite sure how that works, please.
Yes, Debbie, you're absolutely right. So the results have been through and scrutinised through our governance, and yes, you're right, at the people committee, and they also went into board, and people committee are expecting in June they will see the actions associated with these results, and they will scrutinise the plans and the progress, and it will be monitored through regularly into every people committee against our delivery plans.
Thank you.
Thanks, Debbie. That's a helpful observation. And like all of these things, it's the board committee that does the detailed engagement with the issues and then reports in exactly the same way that we have highlight and exception reports to the council. We'll have exactly the same thing at board. So it's an issue that board is engaged with off the back of the detailed work in people committee. Good. Thank you very much, Amy. Thank you for presenting that. It's really helpful. Thank you. I'm going to take, as I mentioned earlier, I'm going to take item 3.4 now, which is the draft annual quality report, because I'm conscious, Sharon, that you can't necessarily be here for the whole meeting, and I was keen that you introduced the paper. So thank you very much for joining us and doing that.
Thank you, Kevin. So hello everyone, my name's Sharon Harvey. I'm the Director of Nursing and Quality here at LPFT, and the next item, as Kevin said, is the annual quality account. So I'm going to introduce a bit around it and then hand over to Mark Housel, Deputy Director in Nursing, to take you all through the detail, and then we'll pick up any questions if that's okay. So it's a statutory duty for us to produce the annual quality account, and historically it used to be really prescriptive about how we have to produce that account. However, that's not the case now, so we still have to produce it, but moving forward we don't have to be as prescriptive. And one of the things, once we've gone through the detail of this report, that I would really welcome Governor's feedback on is whether there's appetite to do a very different approach to this report moving forward. What I would like us to have is a report that's quite smart, quite to the point, very, very accessible, so that it's very public facing and easy to digest about what we've done well, what we could do better, and more importantly for me, that could be co-produced. So there's elements of this report that's co-produced, but it's not as accessible as either I would like it to be or as I think it could be. So I'd really welcome that, and whether or not the governors would be interested in some kind of workshop to help us develop and shape that. But in terms of this specific report that's both backward looking and forward looking, if it's okay, Chair, I'll hand over to Mark to take us through the detail of that, if that's all right.
Yeah, that's fine, Sharon. Thank you very much. Mark, the floor's yours.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Sharon. I'm Mark Housel, Deputy Director of Nursing and Quality. I'll take governors through a brief overview of the process around the development of the account. I won't necessarily go into the detail, but happy to take any questions, as Sharon said, or answer them outside of the meeting if we can't provide those answers here and now. The report looks back at 2023-24 and also looks forward towards its plans for the coming year, 24-25. Data that's within it, governors will note that it's only up to the end of Q3, which is the end of December 2023. And the reason for that is that due to timescales for getting sign-off for these reports, they have to travel through the sign-off process, unfortunately, in a state of semi-incompletion. Alongside that, you'll also note that staff survey results and also community survey results are absent, and that's because they were either not published or embargoed at the time that this report was written. We do have that information now, as we've just heard from Amy around staff survey, and those will be included in the final report. It's really important to note that it is still a statutory duty for us to produce the annual accounts, which is now separate from the Trust's annual accounts as well. And as Sharon's already said, there's real opportunity in that many of the mandated areas that we were required to include, which you find in there this time, and some of which maybe lend themselves to the complexity of the report and the inaccessibility of it. We do have real opportunities to move forward and make this quality account what we want it to be in the future. So any governors that would want to be involved in that work, we'd probably be starting this around November, December time of this year. So there'll be a bit of a delay, but opportunity for people to consider how they'd like to get involved and contribute. Other areas of note would be around the quality priorities. For the year 23-24, that's incomplete, and at the time of final publication and when the accounts presented to Audit Committee and Board for final sign-off, we'll have in the final position as to what of those indicators we've attained or what we maybe haven't quite reached, and what will be carrying on into the work as business as usual in the coming year. Similarly for Sequins, we're waiting on NHS England's final decision around our attainment of those, and they'll find themselves in the final reports. Moving into the coming year, we're still not aware or had issued to us notification by NHSE if the Sequins, the Commissioning for Quality Innovation Schemes, will remain a thing. It's anticipated that they will be ending and we won't be having Sequins for the coming year. And I suppose my final piece.
Sorry, can I interrupt, Mark?
Yes.
Can you explain what a CQuIN is, please? Because there'll be some governors that don't know. Sorry.
Absolutely. We do have a glossary, but for the purpose of the meeting, CQuIN is it's a proportion of NHS budget that is held back by commissioning bodies, and it's set against a number of quality improvement targets that are outlined from NHS England. There's within those targets, there's the financial payment aligns to it, so it's not additional money for trusts, it's part of the trust contract money that's held back, and we have to work to improve quality to attain those.
I'm grateful, thanks, Mark, and sorry for interrupting your flow.
Not at all, Kevin, not at all. Yeah, so I think going back to in January, Lucy Kent attended council governors, and governors needed to support and recommend 2 nationally mandated indicators and 1 locally mandated indicator, which were one of those mandatory requirements from NHS England. Now that those requirements have been lifted, although the governors did support 3 of those indicators, we won't be using those going forwards because they're not part of the mandated requirements, but that allows us to concentrate more specifically upon those local improvements that people will have been presented with previously. So I think I'll end there. Appreciate it's quite a long report and people may have many questions around it, and so I'll give time over to that if that's okay, Kevin. Thank you.
Yep, thank you very much, Mark. Dan.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for the comprehensive report. So, okay, so first question then. There's always more than one. Page 44. There is in the text box they're talking about the new LFPSE system has uploaded approximately 4,000 incidents, but this is not an accurate number. Patient safety team is working with the working with NHS England regarding the data quality of this new system. So my question around that would be, could yourself or maybe sort of the NED that might be responsible for overseeing this, how can you be assured that you're able to act on inaccurate numbers as stated and have a positive, accurate outcome? And are you able to mention what the ongoing work with NHS England is to rectify the issue? Is it an issue at their end, sort of? Is it a system issue rather than a data issue?
Yeah, I'm happy to say that if that's okay. The LFP, Learning from Patient Safety Events, is a new national database system that's replaced the old NRLS, and NHSE, along with all NHS providers, acute trusts, mental health and community, have experienced issues at NHSE's end, and it's to do with language and risk ratings uploading to the national system. So local organisations' data is correct. So what we have are incident management systems called DATICS. That's where all incidents are recorded and reported. So everything in there we're assured and confident is correct, and we can act at a local level. The issue comes in that upload to the national system. So it could be worded better because the inaccuracy is on the system that NHSE are using and looking at. The trust data, the trust information and the trust actions that we need to take to improve safety, we're fully assured and confident that that is accurate. And the work that's going on with the actual national team, we're engaged with a number of other mental health providers in trying to help them to resolve their issues.
Oh, that's great. That's very reassuring. Thank you.
Yeah,
I assumed it would be an NHS England thing. It usually is, isn't it?
You could have done, couldn't you, Dan? Yes, but I didn't say that.
Yeah. Yes. I said that in personal capacity, obviously.
Yeah. Absolutely. Yes. You've got another question, Dan, have you?
Yes. So on page 79 in the glossary, just with my carer hat on, as it often is, I just wondered why we aren't using the official either NHS or the definition that's in the Care Act 2014, just because that's kind of a recognised definition and actually is a bit less woolly and a bit more to the point, and really describes what a unpaid carer might be.
Thanks, Sam. Appreciate that, and we will rectify that. I'll take that. It's probably a legacy from when I've written the reporting years gone by that's stayed in there, but I think we'll go to that and reference that in place in the glossary.
Lovely. Thank you very much. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Dan. Any other questions or comments? I think the key point about this, Mark, is we want to make it better, and repeat that offer to governors to be involved in the process of doing so. And once you've got your head around what that process is going to look like, you can share some of the detail of that with governors, and we'd encourage them to be engaged.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Yeah, great stuff. Thanks, Mark. Thank you, Sharon. Oh, sorry. Got a comment from Bex, who's just got in under the wire. Thank you.
Yeah, sorry, very long report, but it just occurred to me that glossary would be a very useful document for governors to have as a standalone document, so that some of the terminologies could be understood better to help them within their role. Perhaps it could be made available, I don't know.
I'll share that separately with Sam, and then she can distribute that to governors.
Thank you.
Thanks, Bex. Good idea. We'll move on then to, or back, I should say, to item 3.3, which is performance assurance report, and I'm going to hand over to Di.
Thanks, Kevin. Di Bailey, Non-Exec Director and Deputy Chair. Can I just check that you can hear me okay? Because my sound quality has not been brilliant this afternoon. Right, I've got a thumbs up from Kevin, so great. Okay, so I'm aware then that we've got possibly some new governors on the call. So just in terms of introducing the performance assurance report, so this is the report that demonstrates how governors are holding the board of directors to account through people like myself in terms of the non-exec directors who chair the committees that we've just been talking about in various other items. So people committee or quality committee, which is the committee that has seen the quality account that Mark's just been talking about. What you've got in front of you is the reports from those committees in terms of gaining assurance about the trust performance up until the last board meeting in April. So that quarter of meetings. And governors who have been on the call before will probably notice that, as well as the reports from Quality Committee, People Committee, Sustainability Committee and Audit Committee, you've now got the first report of the Performance Committee, which is a new committee that we've introduced to really get beneath the detail of the integrated performance report that comes to board. And this is all part of the new governance structure that we've adopted in LPFT to make sure that we get real alignment about how we are performing in accordance with the trust strategy. So what I'm going to do now is to introduce each of my invite each of my non-exec colleagues to talk to their section of the report. So Sarah, I think it's over to you first to speak to the quality section.
Thank you. My name's Sarah Whiteman. I'm one of the non-exec directors, and I am just about to take over chairing the Quality Committee. The highlights that I just wanted to pull out from the Quality Committee, which is about providing assurance about the risk mitigation and making sure that the trust is doing what it says it should do to the highest standards. And then two just governance points that I'd like to point out for the governors. In terms of medical director and nursing reports, wanted to pull out the reduction in long-term segregation, the fact that more consultants are being aligned to the community mental health teams to reduce the waiting list, which is obviously good news for our service users, improving the number of Section 12 doctors, the people involved in the Mental Health Act and protecting people, and then safer treatment for patients who are taking sodium valproate, which is a medication safety alert that's come through relatively recently, and as well as the trust registering for the Culture of Care programme on the wards. In terms of governance, the 2 points I just think it would be important for the governors to be aware of is that we've increased the board assurance framework score about complaints because of the time taken to respond and the need for more patient involvement in responding to complaints. And that is something that the medical director and the director of nursing and quality are taking forward, but just important to be aware of, I think. And then around the terms of reference for the quality oversight group, which weren't approved, and that this is in the context of some changes to the governance structure which are needing to be embedded. Subsequent to the meeting, we have met and we will be making some changes, but basically the delegation for any decision making in the meantime will be made via the group, but via the medical director and the director of nursing. And I think those are the highlights I'd like to pull out in addition to the report.
Thanks, Sarah. It looks, Dan, I think you've got a question. Is that right, or is that the?
No, that's definitely a new question, Di.
It's always right.
Right, sorry, Kevin. Sorry. Okay. So shall we move on then to? Go on. Sorry.
Let's take Dan's question and then we'll move on.
Yeah, because it's directly to Sarah, if that's okay.
Yeah, I think that's easiest.
Yeah.
So,
thank you, Chair. So just if you could just really quickly explain what the Every Voice group is. I know it's in there, but it's not exactly explained. I do personally know what the Every Voice group is. I think it's amazing, but I think it'd be really nice to share that with the governors and anybody watching.
Are you okay with this one, Sarah, or do you want me to pick this up as?
Yes, I think it'd probably be better if you did, actually.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, just so that colleagues are aware on the call. So the March Quality Committee meeting, which the notes refer to, was my last committee meeting as chair, and I've handed over to Sarah. So I've perhaps been involved with the Every Voice group a little longer than Sarah has. So this was one of the things that we've been really grappling with at Quality Committee, was how to really get the patient experience voice heard in our conversations about quality in a way that was really meaningful and helped us to really understand what that experience was like for people who use our services. So we have an Every Voice group, which is representative across our inpatient services, and they now are reporting directly into Quality Committee, supported by our Every Voice guardian, who's Lou Bannister. And the March Quality Committee meeting was the first meeting that we had that group come to the meeting and present. And basically what they came to tell us about was the work that they were doing. So, for example, there's been a recent initiative that the non-execs and the executive directors have taken part in, which has been about Come Dine With Me, which has been about seeing how our meals and food is experienced by our patients across our inpatient services, and other areas that they're working on at the moment. And as a consequence of that, there are actions in train that will really amplify the patient voice going forward. And also Sharon Harvey, our Director of Nursing and Quality, is also working with Lou to look at how we get that voice extended beyond our inpatient services. So I hope, Dan, that answers the question, and apologies, Sarah, for butting in there, but I just thought it might help.
Yeah, sorry for the
Much better
confusion.
answer than I'd have given.
Okay, back to you then, Di, I think.
Thanks, Kevin. So I think now we can go to Sustainability Committee. Chris. Come in,
Thank you,
Chris.
Thank you, Di. Hello, everybody. Chris Wright, Non-Exec Director. I chair the Sustainability Committee. I won't be chairing it after this meeting because it's going to be called the Best Use of Resources Committee going forward. So there you go. But the Sustainability Committee, as you would expect, is concerned with the sustainability of the trust in its broadest sense, its financial sustainability and wider issues related to sustainability, such as the Green Plan. Our last meeting, we focused on the work which is still ongoing around our financial sustainability. As you know, LPFT is very well managed from a financial point of view, but our budget is made up of both recurrent funding and non-recurrent funding. And although we're very well managed, and we again have achieved a positive position in 23-24, we do have an underlying recurrent deficit, which at the beginning of the year was standing at something like 6.3 million, but because of the work that has been taking place across the trust, that's now reduced to a figure of about 4.4 million. So there's positive progress, but more work to be done, and we're keeping a close eye on that through the demand and capacity work, which is being led by colleagues in the finance team. The second point to bring to your attention is we received the annual Green Plan, a brilliant plan actually, really well crafted, and will gives a lot of assurance about the level of analysis and thinking that goes into our contribution to achieving net zero by 2040. But the reality of this plan is it's not cost neutral. In fact, it's very expensive. And we will be needing to speak with our colleagues at BICB and obviously NHS England about the implications of achieving net zero by 2040. And that again is ongoing, an ongoing conversation. And then the third point to bring to your attention is we received a business case for a memory assessment service for Lincolnshire. Lincolnshire is an outlier. It doesn't have a memory assessment service as such. And we've put together a very compelling case to the ICB to try and attract funding to develop a memory assessment service across Lincolnshire. I'm not aware that we've had a positive response from the ICB as yet, but the urgency of this issue is very high, and we will need to have a think about what we do as a trust if that money isn't forthcoming. So those are the highlights from the last Sustainability Committee before we become the Best Use of Resources Committee going forward. And Di, I'm also going to do the People Committee if there are no questions on that.
Right, okay, thanks Chris. I was just wondering that one, so thanks for the heads up. Right, I think we have got a question from Dan.
Yes, thank you.
Dan, we have a question from you.
Yes, so it's around, there we go. Sorry, my connection cut out for a second there. So it's around the green and sustainable agenda moving forwards.
Mm-hmm.
How can you be sure that that can be managed effectively and cost effectively, of course, with our aging building stock? Because I'm aware quite a lot of our buildings are getting on a bit and may not be the most efficient of buildings, shall we say. You know, and without knocking them all down and starting again, which I would assume would be a huge capital cost. How do you manage that, those two aspects?
It's a great question, Dan, and the answer is with great difficulty. And as I said in my highlight, if we're serious about the Green Plan, it's going to require a considerable investment, particularly in relation to estate. And therefore, those conversations need to be taking place between our commissioners and indeed between the ICB and NHS England. And the reality is achieving net zero by 2040 is going to be very difficult to pull off unless there's a considerable investment of capital. Meanwhile, we will be doing everything we can within the resources we've got to try and ensure that we're future-proofing our buildings. We're doing work around using our buildings to attach EV chargers and things for travel and transport, but that doesn't change the reality that you brought to our attention. You then look at some of the work that's gone on in the new Castle and Ellis wards and see the quality that you can achieve around this agenda, and the work at Norton Lee and the eradication of the Boston dormitories. Again, that will be an exemplar project, but they're only those examples are in short supply given everything else that we're aware of. So I'm sorry, I can't give you assurance that we can resolve that. All I can say is that we will be raising those concerns with the appropriate authorities.
But I think, though, Chris, what we can provide Dan assurance on is that as a board, these are issues of which we are fully seized, Dan, and there are undoubtedly going to be some difficult and interesting conversations for us to have as a board around how we prioritise our spend.
Absolutely, and Dan, the green plan, if you get a chance to have a look at it, it's a really excellent document, and I think we're blessed with the quality of people we've got working on this, and who are absolutely, as Kevin says, seized by the urgency of the agenda, and it's something we all need to hold ourselves to account to try and find solutions.
Thank you, and thank you, Chair.
Thanks, Dan.
Thanks, Chris. I'm not seeing any other comments or questions. So do you want to carry on then with people?
Yeah,
please?
Thank you. Yeah, so Tim Harry, the non-exec director who chairs the People Committee, can't be here today. So I'm a member of this committee as well. And Tim has asked me to feed back. I'm really pleased that Amy presented her paper, because one of the highlights to report back was the National People Survey. And I won't rehearse what Amy has said, but really encouraging, reporting of the experience of our staff in relation to those issues, which we should be very proud of, notwithstanding, and certainly not being complacent about the issues we need to continuously address. I do want to say that the position we're in as a trust in relation to people is I believe a much stronger place than we were maybe 2 years ago, and Amy and her team deserve huge credit for the rigour and attention they've brought to this subject, and we've seen that in relation to our recruitment and retention, which has improved considerably over the last period to reach a position where we felt as a committee we were able to reduce the level of risk that we've previously been working to in relation to our board assurance framework. So the metrics are suggesting that we're heading in a positive direction, and therefore that risk has relating to lack of staff has now been reduced. And then finally, to say, as Sarah highlighted earlier, in relation to quality, working on the interface of the People Committee with the new governance arrangements. And as a consequence of that, we'll be receiving reports now from the Freedom to Speak Up Guardian, which will give us a rounded picture on what's going on across the trust. So I hope that's sufficient, but if any questions, Amy can answer them.
Thanks, Chris. I can see Dan has a question.
If it's a hard question, Dan, it goes to Amy. Okay.
Fair enough. Fair enough. That's fine with me. It's so. And my memory isn't the best, so please do correct me if I'm wrong. But I think previously, there was some talk about questionnaire fatigue, especially with the TikTok between the pulse survey and then the annual survey and then another pulse survey.
Yeah.
Was anything discussed within People Committee about the possibility of maybe reducing them or the frequency of those?
Dan, that is such a brilliant question, and we have had these conversations about the multitude of questionnaires, and you're absolutely right with fatigue associated with it. Some of these things are nationally required, and we have to do some of this stuff. I would be making it up if I was to tell you we've got a solution to this. Amy might have, and if she wants to pop online, she can help me out here.
Thanks, Chris. I was putting in the chat, thanks for your kind words, until you defaulted to me for any questions. Yeah, thanks, Dan. We have discussed it actually in the People Committee, because whilst we are steadily improving the response rate of the National Staff Survey, so we were so close to getting to 60%, and we've got plans to really continue to up that. Our quarterly pulse check surveys response rate is much lower. I mean, it benchmarks really well nationally, but when you're saying things such as 30%, it is definitely not where we want it to be. As Chris says, it is nationally mandated. It is in our contract. We have to do these surveys, but we do have some flexibility, and believe it or not, you can choose to do what is called the People Pulse, which is a monthly survey rather than do the quarterly. And interestingly, some other trusts have found that to be better than the quarterly. So it is really interesting. It's what I would say is we are exploring it, and I think some of it is around tech, Dan, and so some of those other organisations that have moved to the monthly have got it as an app, and I think sometimes it's the accessibility rather than the frequency of the survey, and that's what we're currently having a look at and liaising with other organisations on to decide what we go with. And as I said before, when presenting the staff survey, we temperature check how our staff feel in a number of ways, and we will continue to rely on them, like the face-to-face staff engagement, as Chris said, Freedom to Speak Up, our well-being survey. So we have to do some things, but please be assured we are testing out if it's survey fatigue or accessibility as well. Hope that answers it, Dan.
Lovely. Yes, thank you, Amy. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks, Amy. Thanks, Dan. Bex, I think you have a comment.
Yeah, it was just following on for that. There was discussion with regard to this at the recent development day for governors, and one of the things that was mentioned was the need for information to be given to staff, and the need for staff to be able to use IT, but to remember that not all staff have an internet access at home or have access to NHS systems at home when they're away from their workplace, and have the time to be doing their job and the time to break out to be able to complete. So I think we need to be very conscious of this and make sure that we can do as much as we can to help staff in that situation.
Thanks, Beck. Yes, and I think that's an issue that goes beyond the NHS, doesn't it? I mean, there are many surveys in many other walks of life that are sort of employment related, but people don't necessarily have access outside of their employment hours. Yeah. It
was with regards to patients first, and that our patients are more important than completing a survey, I think. And they are my words, not the words of somebody from the development day, but that was what came over.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. Right. Thanks, Bex. I think then, Kevin, you've appeared. Does that mean you wish to contribute, or?
No, I haven't appeared. I've been here all along.
Oh, right. OK, sorry, I've only just saw you on the screen. OK, so I think we're moving now then into Performance Committee, which sits with me as the chair. So this was the first time the committee had met. And really what we were very keen to ensure is that as a new committee and as an addition to the governance structure, that we really add value. So just to give governors a sense of the information that we were getting at Performance Committee. So what we were doing at that committee was looking at the integrated performance report that goes into board, with the added insight from each of the different divisions. So the adult division, the specialist division, the older persons division. So we were able to see how that performance was happening by division. One of the things that the committee is really keen to do moving forward is to really understand the impact of that divisional activity at a strategic level. So just to make that live for people. So, you know, we've heard from Amy about how the workforce situation has improved considerably in terms of recruitment and retention. And we're seeing the impact of that through some of our wait times. They're still not where we want them to be, but they are improving. You've heard from Chris Wright about some of the financial constraints that we're operating with in terms of premises and our estate. And Performance Committee is starting to look at the impact of some of that on how we might model services differently, so that we can start to get a real sense of that, how some of these issues impact on our performance strategically. So between the first Performance Committee and the one that we've just had, we've now got additional benchmarking data, which is helping us to look at some of those strategic performance issues in more detail. So I'll stop there and just check whether anybody wants to ask me anything about Performance Committee. I can't. Dan.
Thank you, Di. Sorry. Are you able to simplify point 3 for me at all, the recommendation to the board?
Right, so yes, I can explain
Thank
this. So what, as I've just said, one of the things that we were looking at Performance Committee are the targets that we're expected to meet by NHS England, which is in relation to our wait times. OK, so those targets are in relation to how long people are waiting for services. What we then know less about is what happens in terms of the flow of people to us through our services. So, for example, if they wait longer to get in, does it then take longer for them to get well and be discharged? So we want to know more about flow. In order to do that, we need data that will help us to understand that flow better. So we added a risk to the risk register that was about that was about saying, if we don't get this enhanced data, then we will be forever sort of, limited in the way that we understand patient experience. And since we had that conversation at Performance Committee, the team who are working with our Director of Operations have taken that on board, and that's why we're starting to see some of the benchmarking data. And we've also got a piece of work going on at the moment, which is helping us to understand about length of stay in services.
That's great. Thank you for that.
Okay, I think then we're okay to move into audit, which is Ian.
Thanks, Di. Afternoon, everyone. Ian Orrell, Chair of the Audit Committee. Hopefully the report was fairly straightforward. I wanted to try and cover the range of issues that we as an audit committee have been involved in recently. Perhaps just to mention a couple of things in particular around audit work. In terms of internal audit work, you'll probably recall that there was some pressure on this work at the time of our previous meeting. And I'm pleased to say that we're beginning to see signs of improvement in that area in the sort of response of the audit team and us as an organisation. So I'm hopeful that the next time I come along, that pattern will continue. And from the external audit perspective, I think it's fair to say that the preparatory work that is being done in advance of the year end, we're well placed. So that on both counts is, I think, good news. In terms of the future, I'd just also say, and one or two mentions have already been made about changes to our governance arrangements, and what we want to do is emphasise further the audit committee's work in the area of risk management. So we'll be looking at governance structures and so on, and looking at getting some external perspectives on that as well, to make sure we get it pick up best in class sort of thinking in that area. Final thing I'd say is, to put it bluntly, we're coming up to rush hour in terms of audit committee work, with it being year end. So we'll be going through all the usual year end issues. So that's probably as much as I wanted to say, but happy to take any questions.
Thanks, Ian. Let me just check whether we've got any. I can't see any questions or comments. So I think, Kevin, it's over to you.
Right, thank you, Di. Thank you for taking us through that, and thank you to non-executive colleagues for covering all of that in real detail. I mean, just a quick point on the purpose of that report, especially for governors that haven't been involved in these conversations before. So key role of the Council of Governors is to hold non-executive directors to account for the performance of the board. So the purpose of what we've just done for the last several minutes is to try to demonstrate to the council that as a group of non-executives, either in the board itself or through committees, that we are properly engaged with the performance of the organisation, able to derive assurance about that and about systems of control and so on. I think what we've been shown this afternoon is a really significant degree both of assurance and of appropriate engagement and control in those key governance committees led by non-executive directors. So I hope that helps just provide some context to that for governors that might not have been engaged with those conversations before. We've got one more substantive, and thank you for your comment in chat, Carol, really appreciated. We've got one more substantive item on the agenda, so I intend to take that straight away, and that is the appointment of external auditors. And Ian, I think you're speaking to this in Mark Platz's absence.
Yeah, that's right, Kevin. Thanks for that. Yeah, again, as I said on my previous note, hope the report is pretty much self-explanatory, but I thought it'd be useful just to pick up maybe a couple of the salient points, although I say the details are in there. The first thing I would say is that the Council of Governors are responsible for appointing or reappointing, in this case, our external auditors. So that needs to be pointed out. In terms of the process, as you'll see in the report, we went out to tender, as you would expect, as part of the wider system on this. There was only one response in terms of that process. I would add, and I think we covered this in the report, that I don't think that was a huge surprise, because I have to say that this is not a personal opinion. This is fact. The external audit market is a particularly difficult market, and it has been for a number of years now. So it's a lot of the major players have decided strategically to pull out of that market. So I don't think it's unique to us that we're only receiving one response through this process. The response we've got is from our existing auditors, who, in my experience, they've been working with us for about 18 months, has been positive with them. I know through the process that they did decide to get involved in, that the panel heard a good response from them. So I think they're in a strong position to move forward. And the system as a whole has used Mazars. Let's say the Lincolnshire system as a whole has used Mazars for the past 3 or 4 years. And again, my soundings are that that's been a solid relationship. So although, as I said earlier, disappointed that we didn't get the numbers, at the same time we have, if you like, got a horse that is known. So I think in terms of the quality, there are no concerns on that score. The financial figures are also included there. And a couple of things I would just say on that. Clearly, it's quite difficult to benchmark when you haven't got others in. However, I think there's a couple of things that I would particularly point out. First of all, their increases after the initial step year on year are very low. They're below existing levels of inflation, which is a good sign. And the other thing is, I have also managed to see some work that the HFMA produced on benchmarking, which is about 4 years old, and at the time that was saying that an average trust like ourselves was paying about £80,000 for its audit support. So that's 4 years old. So I don't think these figures are expensive in any particular way. I hope my comments have helped perhaps bring the report to life a bit more, and perhaps assured people in terms of perhaps 1 or 2 questions that they may have had.
Thanks, Ian.
Thank you. Thank you, Kevin.
Daniel, you've got a question.
Yeah, some of which has already been answered in that commentary, so thank you for that, Ian. But it's really around that recommendation and rationale. How do you assure yourself that actually it is a competitive, fair and reasonable tender when there is only one tender put forwards? And are you able to speak on whether going in collectively helps with that tender process, or could that be a bit of a blockage? And then thank you for your comments around the increases, because the wording itself, the in-contract increase seems quite large. Will that be monitored over the 4 years of the contract, or is that now fixed in for the 4 years and then it gets looked at again in 4 years' time?
Yeah, let me try and pick those up. Really good questions in there. I think in terms of all going into the system, you know, together, I don't think that has a you know, a negligible difference to what the result might have been. I come back again in terms of the sort of benchmarking and the assurance. So the fact that it's quite difficult to do that if you haven't got direct comparisons at the time, and that was my concern when it first came through. So you know, we're thinking the same way, which is why I mentioned that thing earlier about the HFMA and you know what that position is. It's unfortunate that you can't, you know, if you can't get more horses to run this race, it's really difficult to get that absolute assurance in the way that we'd normally like it. But just to give you an indication about how difficult this market is, the Public Accounts Committee have been reviewing this for a good number of years. So it's not a recent phenomenon, and it's not just the NHS, it's all the way across the public sector. And some people would argue that some of that history is down to the Audit Commission being disbanded. That's not helped. So there's a whole raft of things there, and I think your other point of your question, I hope I've covered them all. I'm covering them all off. Was in terms of that price business. Yes, there is a leap between the current and where we are now. It's quite difficult though to draw those two comparisons, because what we don't know, of course, is how Mazars arrived in that with their figures as they are at the moment. What I do know from looking at some of the detail is that they've learned from their relationship with us and the types of service they're providing. And what they've done is change the mix of the types of auditors that they've got on site, which is quite a key thing when you're providing an audit service, you know, in terms of levels and skill levels, experience levels, etc. of individual auditors. So when I put all those things into the wash, that gives me assurance that I think this is a very reasonable way of us progressing. But I come back to what I said right at the outset. It's the Council of Governors that makes the decision, and not me. But I hope that gives some assurance.
Yeah, can I just add a bit to that, Dan, which I think might be helpful. And Ian, just kick me under the table if I get any of this wrong. But when you say that the audit market is difficult, the reality is that, you know, in the past we've relied on the kind of big five and your PwCs and your Deloittes, and this is a market that they are now withdrawing from because they're you know, they aren't making money on it, and there are more lucrative areas in which they can do business. So to your point about, you know, does appointing a system-wide external auditor get in the way, as it were? Actually, if we went our own way, we'd be even less likely, you know, to get competitive bids, and we're less likely to achieve good value for money, because at least this way we're more likely to get some scale discount from Mazars than we would be if, you know, if we had our own smaller standalone contract. I know that is not the perfect mechanism for ensuring value for money, but it's, in the circumstances, it's playing the hand as best as we can.
Yeah, I think if I can just come back on that, Kevin, I think that your last phrase about playing the hand as best we can, I think absolutely gets to it. The other thing I would add, and I'm not here to blow the trumpet for Mazars at all, but in terms of where they are in the market, as Kevin alluded to before, many of the big players have dropped out, but Mazars are in that sort of tier below. They're not a small organisation, you know, so we're not losing anything from that perspective.
Yeah, absolutely. Bex, sorry, Dan, is that okay?
That's fine. Thank you both.
Thank you. Bex.
Yeah, my question's been answered. Thank you.
Good stuff. Thank you. So this is a decision that the Council of Governors has to take. So it's for the Council of Governors to appoint the auditors. There's a clear recommendation from the chair of the audit committee in terms of the appointment of Mazars. I would just add that this is a system-wide contract, so if the council were to decide not to agree with the recommendation, then effectively we would have to disentangle ourselves in some way from that system-wide procurement, and that would leave us without an external auditor for a considerable period of time, which is not a position that we'd want to be in. So can I ask for governors please to indicate in chat whether or not they're content to accept the recommendation to appoint Mazars as the Trust's external auditors? That's good. Thank you very much. Take that as approval, and Ian, thank you for presenting that. Karen, you've got the last item on the agenda, which are some changes to committee terms of reference.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I'm Karen Scott, Trust Secretary. They are so minor, Kevin. This is the Council's regular review of its committee's terms of reference. I won't say annual, because in the case of the Standards Committee as set out in the paper, it's only required to review its terms of reference every 2 years. And as governors will see, the amendments that are proposed are very, very minor. So hopefully everybody's happy to agree with those proposals, and we can get those amended and updated on the website. Thank you, Kevin.
Thank you. And can I suggest that we then take both of the amendments together, and if colleagues are happy to indicate in chat that they're content to approve those, we can. Excellent. Thank you very much. Move on then to any other business, and I do have an item of any other business from Chief Executive, Sarah.
Yeah, hello. Thank you very much, Kevin, and apologies, but I just wanted to flag to our governors that we are about to do our formal launch of the revised trust strategy. We've been talking about it a lot and using the framework. And thank you for your contributions in actually creating the trust strategy. So we haven't made any material changes, but we've just made it more snazzy and accessible, and put in some links to system documents, as well as some sort of key facts and figures, but the actual nuts and bolts of the strategy are the same. But Joe Walker, our head of comms and participation, has just put a link in there. So that's the link to the website and the accessible version. But you'll see other communications coming out, and we're busy as a executive team doing various videos to try and get it out there as much as possible. So just wanted to flag that to governor colleagues. Thank you, Kevin.
Thank you very much, Sarah. I don't have any other business, so that's us done. So thank you very much, everybody, for your attention and contribution this afternoon. Oh, Bex, I'm terribly sorry.
Yeah, I just wanted to ask a question, if anybody could sort of enlighten me, with regards to the staff awards, which are currently under nomination at the moment. There must be some historic to them with regard to them being called the staff awards, and I wondered why they weren't the LPFT awards, the staff and volunteers awards, because there are awards there for volunteers as staff. And if anybody can enlighten me, I'd really appreciate it.
Sarah, do you want to? No? Does anyone want to comment on that? Or but maybe it's a conversation we could have.
Joe's come in,
Joe,
Kevin.
yeah.
Joe beat me to it.
Go on. Well, you beat Joe to it just about. That's which is why I was confused. Go on, Joe.
Yeah, so Joe Walker, Head of Communications and Participation. The current title actually for the awards now is Team LPFT Values Awards, to reflect exactly what you've said, Bex, in terms of we still refer to it historically as staff awards, but actually the title of the event has changed to be that Team LPFT Values Awards, to reflect the fact that it is wider than volunteers now, because we completely took that on board from some previous comments that people have made. So that is now reflected.
Perhaps we need to move away then from promoting them as the staff awards.
None of our promotion that I know of does reference that, but I will double check that and make sure that that doesn't in future if it has.
Yeah, it might just mean that it just needs reinforcing with people talking about the staff awards, and not being something that our comms team have put together. So that the name that is reflective actually comes there, rather than sort of people still calling it staff awards. I know what this is like. I belong to another organisation and they have something which is of a similar vein.
Thanks, Bex. Thank you very much for answering that, Joe. I think we are done then. Thank you very much, as I was saying, to everyone for their engagement and contributions this afternoon. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Bye. Bye.
Bye.